Chit chat, and then we'll go. All right, I think this here, the red light's on. That I think that means we're on the air. So I guess I will do the official opening of the show, which will be Mac DeMarco again. I got a little story about Mac DeMarco, by the way, too. Anyway, but more than you want to know. Here we go. Annoying Peasant Radio Show. I don't know what episode. I don't even keep track of the numbers. The next episode. How's that?
That sounds good.
Here we go. Hey, I started that one out in the middle of the tune there. I didn't know what I was doing, as usual. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So, hey, welcome everybody to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. I'm Tom, and I have with me tonight, I have Tim. Say hello, Tim. That's okay.
Hey there, everybody. Hopefully you can hear us.
Yeah, hopefully. And I have Brad with me. So, good evening, Brad. Thanks for joining us again.
What's up, everybody?
You know, all kinds of stupid stuff is up. I mean, I got quite the smorgasbord of stuff here tonight, but actually I think it'll be interesting. I guess that's up to the audience to determine in the end, but I think there's some cool stuff. Well, I don't know if cool's the right word, but very different stuff going on and a lot to talk about, I guess. So, anyway, just freezing to death here. Actually, Tim, you maybe can appreciate this. I'm sitting in, obviously in the studio, looking out at the lake, and it's mostly ice out there, and the wind is blowing it, and I'm just wondering, is it going to blow into my shoreline, or is it going to blow the other way? So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it could do a ton of damage if it, comes in at the wrong spot, So I'm just hoping it stays away. It's about, I don't know, 100, 200 yards offshore at the moment, so hopefully it stays there.
In April, no less.
Yes, and actually, for us, that's a little, early for ice out. I mean, it's been after May 6th, I know, before, so. Yeah, that's crazy. But, hey, before we go, before I actually really start the show, if you guys are in, well, I see Tim's in the chat room. I don't know if Brad, do you even know how to get in?
I do.
Okay. Because I see Tanya's in there tonight too. So, hello, Tanya. Thanks for joining us. I guess I should say thanks for everyone for joining us. This is the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. I should get to my show docket so I know what I'm talking about. I've got so many things open because so many different things cooking. Anyway, I'll just get started here and then we can get on because last week with Alex, we went almost 2 hours, so I gotta up the pace here tonight. Anyway, welcome to this episode of the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. Thanks for joining us. My name's Tom, and of course, I'm joined here by, actually, this time I got Tim and Brad. And we, let me make a bold statement, I say. We intend on exposing the fraud that is the state and how a free society would avoid the errors we are experiencing currently. I thought I'd throw that in there to just kind of ruffle some feathers right off the bat. We got, like I said, a very eclectic hodgepodge of topics, but they actually are related, and a couple of them are related, I should say. But I also wanted to do with that little foreign policy thing. But tonight's feature story relates to the state's attempts to change behavior, featuring, I guess, the Indiana, Religious Freedom Act. I don't even know exactly what they call it. And then you're going to say, how am I ever going to do this? But I'm going to sort of kind of relate it to the French modeling, body mass index restriction that's proposed. But our program is more than that, of a discussion of the specific failings of the state. I would argue the state is about your enslavement, your loss of freedom. The only tool available, of course, to the state is the use of aggressive force, and its resources that it gains are confiscated from the producers who are in the marketplace, of course. Its very existence, that is, the state, is predicated on the initiation of violence, and its very existence is therefore unjust, in my view. And we'll see if Brad and Tim share that view.
Yep.
But for tonight, let's just say, the basic question for the evening or for the episode is, can society organize via voluntary exchange? Can we voluntarily associate? Or the alternative is, must society be organized by coercion or by force? I argue it's, the use of force or a gun, is that the proper tactic to create order? Is the initiation of force inherently disorderly? I think Stalin, Hitler, and Chairman Mao thought so. And many others do today. I think it's very commonplace. And a lot of politicians, I guess, don't state it outwardly. Some do. I guess there's a judgment call there. But, it's out there. And I guess we're here to combat that.
And Tom, I'll just throw in that, if you haven't listened to the show before, you may be thinking, really, does it have to be one or the other? I mean, is it really just those are my only two options? I mean, do I have to choose between complete voluntary association versus someone putting a gun to my head, whether it's a local mobster, teamster, or a government agency, or the President of the United States? Someone may be asking, is it really just that black and white? Does it come down to one of the two only, and there's no gray in between? And I think we've covered this before on previous shows, but just to lay it out there, I think if you get down to the very roots of what choice versus no choice comes down to, ultimately, yeah, that's what it comes down to. Because if you're going to have a system that's going to try to make you do something that you don't want to do, how are they going to enforce that? How are they going to make that happen? Well, ultimately it comes to either you're going to be put in prison, or your things are going to be taken away from you, or, in worst case, you're incarcerated, or even worse, your life is taken from you. So yeah, I mean, that's basically, if you boil it down to how is it going to be enforced, it does come down to that.
Yeah, and I think many people are distanced from that reality, I would call it, because, I've heard many times people say to me, well, there's no gun to my head. So
right.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think you're overblowing the situation.
Right.
And I'm totally on board with you, Tim. Ultimately, there is a gun to my head.
Right.
If the state tells me I must do something and I choose not to comply,
right,
I'm faced with those alternatives that you laid out.
Yep.
So I don't know how you could say that otherwise, or how that it could not be the case, but some argue that. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to lay out the basic for the show so people listening have a basic idea of what we're going to address, at least in part tonight. Who knows where the topic actually goes? We are loose cannons as by nature, I think, so you never know. With that, I guess I'll hand it over to Brad. I know Brad's going to handle the announcements for us tonight, and we'll go from there.
So, thanks, Tom, and I absolutely want to welcome Tim. This is great to have you join us.
Thank you.
And I'm trying to remember, have you been on before? And then you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. I have, Tom and Tanya and I have tried to get me on the show a couple different occasions. Sometimes I am known as the Texas Father of Seven also. I do have a blog that I write occasionally under that name. But Tom and I actually made a connection through Tanya. Tanya found my blog years ago. I don't even know how many years it's been now, but it's been a while. Tanya and I have actually never met in person, but we kind of met online through my blog and through when she was blogging at the time, and then turned me on to Tom and the Annoying Peasant Radio Show and his blog. And not too long ago, earlier this year, Tom and I and my wife got a chance to meet in person here in Texas when he was visiting, and that's basically all. That's all she wrote.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was wonderful to meet Tim and Jenny in person. That was great.
Yeah.
Very nice people.
So we're going to try to stay on point, but I got to go back. When you chimed in your first comments, Tim, when you said about putting it out there that the extreme points of coercion, gun to your head sort of a thing, and people having a hard time comprehending that it's either or in your guys' opinion.
Right.
I'm always very interested in hearing how or if I'd be surprised if it is, that you saw that as the immediate alternative, that well, there can't be any government at all. And I think that that's a hard journey for folks, and that's something that I think we always try to raise is stay with us, keep thinking. And I wonder if you have any comments to that about your realizations to that.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't remember when the light kind of came on for me, but I seem to recall reading something online once where an elderly, I don't know if it was a couple or if it was just a widow, but anyways, like I'll just say it was a widow, for example. But she had been living in her house for like the last 50 years. It was all paid off, decades before, but she was on a fixed income, and came to be that she was behind on her taxes. So the government basically came in, foreclosed on her house, which supposedly she had paid off and owned. It was supposed to be her property, but because she was not able to keep up with the taxes, even though the property was all in her name, that lo and behold, the government could come in, foreclose on the property to pay off the back taxes and kick her out of her home. And this is a woman who is probably, upwards of 70, 80 years old. I mean, what is she going to do at that point? And that's when I realized, I'm like, look, what kind of place do we live in where she has no alternative other than the government's going to come in with, at gunpoint, probably forcibly take her out of her house that she'd been living in for decades.
And since she's such a threat.
Right. Because we've got to make sure that the government gets their money, and so this is the society that we live in, and the same could be true for any kind of taxes you owe. If you are fined for not obeying the government, if you are if you're not in the right place at the right time. I mean, you can think of countless examples of where the government can basically arbitrarily decide that, hey, you're not complying with our rules. So we're going to either take your property away, or B, imprison you, or even in the worst case, put you to death. Like I said earlier, and that for me is where and if you peel that onion back, and if you start to think about all of the different things that the government does and how it tries to enforce the rules that it puts in place, it comes down to that. The mechanism by which they have to enforce their rules comes down to take your property, take your life, or take your freedom, your ability to move around where you choose.
Well said. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. I absolutely agree with you very much. And I guess the position I always take is, it's not only those freedoms that are taken away and whatever terminology, various meanings of what freedoms mean, but also how the rules are made themselves that take away those freedoms. Those are issues that I always have taken a very strong stance with myself. So glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. So it's awesome to have you with us live. So topics tonight are going to include, as Tom had already mentioned, not only what he mentioned, but also Indiana, Colorado, California water restrictions and fines, and the Iranian nuke deal. So, Tom, I think it's going to be 3 hours tonight, not just 2.
Yeah, we're gonna move this along quickly. So we got to.
That's right.
I'm gonna bust in and say hello to my niece Holly, who's listening tonight, also from Allen, Texas. Tim, your neighbor there, basically.
Hello.
Yeah. So my niece is listening. That's very cool. Always great to have young people with us. Anybody, of course, but I'm always especially thrilled to have young people listening. So I just wanted to add that. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry, I stole your thunder.
I appreciate you jumping in because I don't know that I have a niece named Holly, so that was good.
Sweet.
So welcome, Holly. Glad you're joining us. And then thanks also to Cassie for posting some of the cool stuff on our Facebook page. Our Facebook page, of course, is Annoying Peasant Radio, and we love hearing from folks and having you follow us and contributing. Thanks again for that. Great sense of humor. And please keep it up. Next page. Just reminding everybody that GoraFest 2015 is going to be at the Villa Marie Conference Center. We always talk about this. It's a great time. It's September 24th to the 27th. Save the date. I know we'll be there for sure, Tom.
Yep.
And look forward to hanging out with the folks that will be there as well, and just some terrific people that are involved in this thing. Next item is we're going to watch. This is a suggestion to watch. What is this, Tom? Justice. What's the right thing to do? It's episode 7.
Yep.
It's a lesson in lying from Harvard Business School by Michael Sandel. Can you elaborate on that, please?
It's a lecture series, I guess. And it's, of course, by this guy, Michael Sandel. It's very interesting. You got, I can't remember where we started. It's been so long since I started posting the episodes. But more recently, he'd been talking about Immanuel Kant, of course, a German philosopher, on broadly, what's the right thing to do, morality, his definition, how he defined it. And just very interesting. I have to re-listen to episode 7. It gets pretty intense, and this was like, when is lying, I don't know, acceptable, maybe I'm using air quotes on that word. It's very interesting to think this through. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. I'm looking in the chat, and Tanya says she's getting nothing on her end, so I'm not sure if Tanya is, well, she can't hear me, obviously. I wonder if Tanya's at the Spreaker.com page or the Freedom Talk Radio page, and maybe one of those is not functioning. I am not entirely sure. Because I just got a text from Trigger, and he says my audio is like perfect, but your guys is a little bad. So I assume it's that connection again through Spreaker. But it's interesting how come Tanya gets nothing and Trigger's getting something. So I'm not sure what the issue is, if it's on Tanya's end or what. And again, she can't hear me to go through that anyway. I think for the moment, let's just keep going, and we'll see if Tanya can get to us here, and we won't have wasted a show, hopefully. Okay, so anyway, the Justice, it's a whole series of things that, I don't know, moral dilemmas. I don't know if that's the word. I just posted 2 things on Annoying Peasant Radio Facebook page, and they were about, they were like 2-minute videos, and they were some of the examples that Sandel had used on this. Very good stuff. So anyway, if you get a chance, it's worth 2 minutes of your time to learn that. If you're interested in that stuff, then I would recommend definitely go to the Justice series from Sandel, because obviously it's much more in depth and at a little higher level there, being from Harvard. But good stuff nonetheless.
Very cool, thank you. Also on the Facebook page, there are 2 short videos that Tom posted.
Yeah, those are the videos I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. The other thing that's also on our Facebook page is a link to watch Citizen 4 that Tom and I were talking about earlier, because of some stuff that I had sent to him. You want to elaborate on that, Tom?
Documentary of Edward Snowden and Glenn Greenwald on there. Not, if you're looking for a Friday night action-packed film, that's not the thing to watch. Again, it's not a film really, it's a documentary. You gotta really pay attention, listen to what's going on, but really good. So informative, and I think it should open your eyes as to what is actually going on.
Okay. The recommended reading is titled Conscience of an Anarchist by Gary Chartier.
Former guest of the show.
Former guest of our show, hopefully, and also a future guest of our show.
Exactly.
And then check out episode 371 in Private Cities. And this is a podcast, also on the Annoying Peasant Radio Facebook page.
Yeah, the link is there. That's a Tom Woods podcast.
Okay, thanks. Our next live show will be next Tuesday evening, the 14th, at the usual time, 7 o'clock Central Time, and the chat room is open.
Yeah, and hopefully I'm away from the chat at the moment to see if Tanya can hear us. Or yeah, the last thing I got from her was still nothing here. So,
okay.
Let's see. I'm gonna tell her to try reloading the page and see what she has to say there. Oh, that's a shame if this is not working. I don't know. Trigger's getting it though, so it obviously is working to some degree. So
It's a mystery.
yeah, it's just so frustrating. Anyway, let's go on from there. We kind of got the docket up here and the chat room, so I can kind of see what's going on there. Anyway, I guess maybe the big news for today is it? I would argue maybe Rand Paul announces for president of the United States.
Another former guest of our show.
Not exactly, yeah.
Just kidding.
I don't know. If I got it right, we have Rand Paul and we got Ted Cruz. So I got to throw it out there. Predictions: are all the world's problems going to be solved between the two of them?
Well, you're excited about this, right, Tom?
Very excited, because all you got to do is vote harder, and things will happen.
Well, now we're going to all have to vote, right? It'll be legally required to vote.
Yes, and then mark my words, when that happens, the government will be publishing statistics saying something like 99% participation rate, or 99% of the people voted for, well, what we'll call Putin. Right, the next Putin of the U.S. I mean,
Right.
It's ridiculous. They'll use that, and people will go, "Oh yeah, very high. That's awesome. Everybody's participating." So,
Well, we need another cabinet member then to regulate the required voting.
yeah, we'll need all kinds of boards and all kinds of Oh my goodness, we're going to get to the monitoring of the water here in a little bit. That's how they'll do it. It's a long story. Anyway,
I can see it coming. 2 words: voting czar.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Anyway, so I'll leave that go so we can move on. Anyway, I was gonna put it to you, Brad, and to Nate, because we were expecting Nate to be on originally. But did you see this story from the Twin Cities? And I don't know if you did, Tim, obviously a little farther away from you. There was a number of Minneapolis teens that were detained by a cop. And I got this on the docket here, just so you get this is a quote from the cop, and I obviously won't read the whole thing, but he says, "Plain and simple, if you F with me, I'm going to break your leg before you get the chance to run. I'm being honest, don't screw around," the officer said. It's unbelievable, the stuff that cops are still saying to people and doing to people after, obviously, I think the cat's kind of out of the bag that these guys are being videoed, right? It seems like the cat's not out of the bag. So I guess it's news to some officers, but it freaks me out, what's going on. And what's going on, this young black teen guy says, "Hey, I never said I was going to run." And the cop says, "I'm just giving you a heads up, just trying to be officer friendly right now." Anyway, I have the link here that I'll post on the Facebook page, but I wanted to just, more importantly than the facts, and again, you can go find my link and find the facts of the story or as they are reported. But this is something I always find interesting, that this is viewed instantly. Well, there was at least 3 teens in the car. There could have been more. I don't remember the exact number. And of course, the officer was white. So right away, it's viewed as this is a racial deal, right? That it's a racial bias thing. And I don't really see it that way. I see it, I don't care what color the cop was, and I don't really care what color the teens were, or if they were old people or infants. I guess they weren't driving the car if they were that young, but right, it doesn't really matter to me. To me, I see it as a police abuse issue.
Yep.
And I just find it so interesting when you see the ethnicities of the people involved. It's so quickly seen as, well, it's a racial issue, and that just freaks me out. And again, because what difference does it make what the ethnicities of these people are? If a cop says that to anybody, I'm saying that's police abuse. Well, I guess not abuse of the police. That's the police abusing citizen abuse, I guess, is the right way to say it.
Tom, this is the kind of the hypocrisy that I love to focus in on is people that are proponents of the state enforcing whatever the flavor is of the month, diversity or religious tolerance, or whatever it is that those that favor using the state to kind of further their agenda. this is exactly the hypocrisy that we will see time and again when somebody pulls the race card out and says it's a white cop and it's a non-white, passenger of the vehicle, whatever it would be, right? All you got to do is you got to ask if the issue is the race card. If it was a black cop and a white passenger, are you still going to be up in arms? Are you still going to be protesting? Are you still going to be calling racism? Right. And if not, then the issue that you have is it's not in the police brutality, which is what we're seeing. We're seeing that this is obviously an example of policemen that are unchecked, that are basically thugs and bullies with a badge, and are not being reined in and serving the people like they're supposed to be doing. They're basically serving themselves. And so this is for those that support and stand for liberty and causes liberty. The race issue is beside the point, and it will bother us regardless of if what the race or the sex or the income bracket. Regardless, the situation is unacceptable because it's abuse, not because it belittles some protected class.
Right, and I would go further and say, I'm totally on board with what you said, and I think well said, by the way, is the police don't have the incentive, right, because of the system, the way it's set up, right? It's a monopoly, essentially. There's no reason for them, essentially, to get better. Yeah, they may bend to some public pressure, but I would argue it's A, temporary, and B, it's more, because it's temporary, I guess, it's just window dressing, and it'll eventually return to where it is. And I don't know if you read Robert Higgs, he applies it to a lot of parts, but it's basically ratchet effect. Next time there's a next security issue, the authority of the police is going to ratchet up even higher, but never return back to where it was. And that's a big part of it. The other part for me is, the only way that this could be racism is if we can see a pattern with this officer doing this on numerous occasions, or if there is some policy written that, hey, you guys are white cops, see, what we're going to do is disproportionately, we're going to pull over black kids, but not when they're doing something illegal. And I was actually trying to think of something that, hey, here's a legitimate function of the state, of the police. We have them now, and I really couldn't come up with anything good. But if there was, just pretend with me, right? If they were just continually harassing the black teens instead of the white teens or whatever, gay people or whatever it is, religious people, I don't know, then you could say, hey, there's some racism or there's some bias here. But, until you see that, I don't think you can, I guess you can make that claim, but you can't make it legitimately in my book. So, anything else to add with that? Because I just wanted to finish that segment up about the cops with something that Cassie posted for us on Facebook. I don't know if you saw that, Tim, today.
I saw it. I didn't get to read through the story, but yeah, I saw the link posted.
It was so funny. There was a picture of Forrest Gump, sitting on the bench. Yeah. And I first, of course, the picture came to me first, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. What's Forrest Gump? What's this got to? And I guess the meme on there, the words say, "Police are like a box of chocolates. They'll kill your dog." This is at the bottom. That's kind of clever. I didn't see that coming. But, I know that this is seen, I shouldn't say seen, it's received by many as, well, you're just ragging on the cops, you're not presenting a better alternative. Well, yes, you're right. At the moment, in this discussion, I'm not presenting another alternative. But I think it's also valuable for people to understand that there are these problems. And I think tonight on this short bit that we're talking about, this is not going to be our feature story, obviously, but that we point out further what's the root of this problem, that essentially it's unreformable. It's part of the system that's the problem here. And you have to move to something vastly different than what we have today in order to remedy this or to avoid these conflicts.
Yep.
And again, that's, as Tim pointed out, basically that's what we talk about on this show all the time. And again, we may not be giving that exact remedy right here and now, but stick with us and I think you'll get it. I don't want to spend the time going through that at this moment. Anyway, Anyway, thanks, Cassie, for posting that. I got a good chuckle out of it. I hope if you got a sense of humor, check that out. It's pretty funny. I guess before we go on to our, I don't know if our feature story is the right description tonight because we got kind of a hodgepodge, but you're listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show, and we're very happy that you joined us. And like Brad says, hopefully we can make you think. So with that, we're going to move on. This is kind of the broader issue, I think, for me for the feature story is, you know, it's not necessarily that there's this problem in Indiana, the religious freedom law. It's not that there's necessarily something with we'll get to it, it's going to sound weird, you know, the skinny models in France or the obese people in L.A. It sounds like a weird connection. But it's, you know, the idea of can the state actually essentially create the modern man? Can it form society to its will? That's the broader issue in my view, right? And I'll get to this. This is, I think, from, I can't remember, I think I got this from Statism is Slavery, from their thing, but they raised this basic issue, and I just wanted to basically read this to our audience so they kind of get a feel for where, yeah, it was from Statism is Slavery. When you use the institution of law, in parentheses, and what is law but violence and force, and again, that sounds a little off kilter to people, but again, stay with us, to force your values on other people, two things happen, right? So when you use the law, you get two things. One is, you may in fact succeed, right? You can no longer identify who the people are that you disagree with, since now they have to comply with your ideas or be threatened with fines, which Tim spoke about earlier, what happened to you, right? So, in other words, I think it was Stefan Mullen who did a good job of saying, well, do you know how to turn something that's virtuous and make it not virtuous? Force people to do it, right? Then they can't do it on their own free will. They're forced to. So it's not like they're doing a virtuous act any longer. And number two, by the way, is you open the door to invite others to lobby the same institution, in this case being the state or the law, to have their will enforced also, right? So now that's where I would argue we clearly are, that everybody's trying to get their arm in the cookie jar or use the long arm of the law to, you know, smash your neighbor over the head to get them to do what you want. That mechanism is sitting there unused. If you can engage in the game and lobby hard enough, you can get that mechanism to be used for what you want it to be used for. And I would argue that's what they're pointing out here. You're opening an entire can of worms that, yeah, since one group was able to do it, hey, why can't I do it? And I think that sets you up on this game of everybody is lobbying to try to use that, you know, baseball bat that is the long arm of the law to impose their will on others. And obviously I think it's a very dangerous thing. And their thing goes on, says what happens when a country adopts some crazy person's ideas? You know, Nazi Germany comes to mind. The communist revolution in Russia is another, et cetera, right? And again, I think I've heard about 1 billion times. Well, that can't happen here. Well, I wouldn't be too sure. I'm saying the mechanisms are in place. It's, for me, my view is it's only now a matter of time. But
I would agree.
Yeah, and that's dangerous, extremely dangerous. And
yep.
I think people don't realize what they've set in place. And again, hopefully we're helping them understand that on this show. I just want to go on with what Statism is Slavery had to say, and then we'll really open it up here. He says, believing in your heart of hearts, your belief is the right one or the correct one that everyone else must abide by or be threatened under I think they mean to say the cover of law, to comply with, is, in my opinion, more evil than any other form of prejudice or bias that you believe you are solving. Right? Keep in mind, the prejudice and bias still exists. It's just being suppressed with threats of violence. You know, wanted to relate that to what has happened and maybe continues to happen in Indiana. Indiana, right? The deal. Yeah, maybe Tim, are you better versed in this than me? Probably. You know, lay out the basic idea of what's going on in Indiana.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal scholar, but basically, from my understanding of the blips that I've read, is that, you know, they passed a law that basically gave the right for proprietors to choose to do business based on what their either moral or religious convictions may be, and of course people read into that to say that basically they're trying to legalize segregation, that discrimination. I mean, religious religious hatred. I mean, so yeah. I mean, it kind of blew up in the governor's face because, and I don't know the governor. I don't know what his intentions were or his motives, but it sounds like his intention was probably to give some kind of protection to business owners to say, hey, yeah, you can basically practice your own moral beliefs, and if that means that you're not going to do business with certain people, then we're going to write in the law here that allows you to do that. That affords you the protection to do that.
Yeah, if I understand it right, it shielded them from a lawsuit for such, I don't know, discrimination. I know they didn't use that word, but that's essentially what it is.
Right.
And then, to that end, you had posted an article. I know I'm going a little out of order right now, I think. That was that bakery in Colorado.
Yep.
That was a really interesting one, and I know you know more about that, but I think it fits real well with where we are right now. So, in Indiana, this is that I could be a really religious guy, and I could refuse to make a cake for, say, a gay wedding, and be shielded from a lawsuit. That's where Indiana is. So now, take us where this, was it Azucar Bakery is?
Yeah. Okay. So and I don't know how long ago it was, but even before the Indiana thing, and I don't know why this happens to be the battlegrounds for religious and economic freedom, but bakeries, for some reason, seem to be the battleground from which we are going to determine the rights of people and businesses to choose to associate with whomever they want to or are forced to.
I look at it this way, Tim. If I'm going to fight somebody, it's going to be over a donut.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, that is a battle I am going to engage in.
I'm sorry.
But interestingly, I mean, this goes back to, I don't even know when the first kind of news hit the airwaves, and this wasn't in Indiana, but back where some baker basically stood up and said, no, I'm not going to bake a cake for your gay wedding because of my moral convictions or my religious convictions or whatever. The ACLU came in and basically, it drew national attention. So fast forward then after that, but before the Indiana law passed, in this bakery in Colorado, somebody who's obviously trying to point the hypocrisy out in the system goes to a baker and says, hey, I want you to bake me this cake, basically slamming homosexuality and the act as homosexuality based on my religious beliefs, that it's a sin, that it's unnatural, and that God hates it, and the baker, the proprietor, refused and basically said, I'm not going to bake that cake regardless of what your moral convictions are because I don't agree with your moral convictions or your religion. And the irony here, of course, and this was the whole point, I'm sure, this guy wanting to go in, I'm sure I don't know of anyone that's going to have a celebration which involves cake where you're decrying the act of homosexuality, but I'm sure he was making a point that, hey, if the tides are turned, right, and we're now talking about me standing up for my moral beliefs, the ones that are pushing all bakers to accept all orders, you've got to stand behind me. If you're being truthful, and if you're being honest and fair, or if you're applying the rule of law evenly, you've got to be in my corner and say, hey, this is a customer, you can't discriminate, he wants a cake, you got to bake him a cake.
Right.
And the baker refused. Well, I don't know when the news, I saw the article today, I don't know when it actually officially came out, but today I saw the article and it said that baker basically, the courts or the powers that be determined that baker that refused to bake that cake was within her rights to do so, that it was not discrimination, it was not infringing on the customer's rights in any way, that because she was practicing, she had made the determination that he was wrong, that his religious beliefs or his beliefs were unfounded, and so she didn't have to bake that cake.
Right.
Which is, if you're talking about the basis of the law and how it's going to be applied, you obviously you don't have to think too hard to know and see that this is a double standard.
Yes. That's the perfect point. It's obviously a double standard, and that's the deal. Is I would argue, again, the broader issue is what really matters here. It's not necessarily what's on any individual cake. I mean, contract with whoever you want to write whatever you want. If they agree to put, I don't know, I hate 53-year-old German guys. Go ahead, put it on, if someone will do it for you, go ahead, knock yourself out, buy a cake if that's what you want. But that's the point. You realize this is what people, I think today we've come to the point of, being sensitive about things, that anything that I find offensive or that I don't like, I'm going to sue you over. And it seems to have teeth is the whole point, the weird thing. It's like, so what if I'm offended? Trust me, I've been offended more than once.
And what's weird about that, too, Tom, is that it's, as we'd said, it's not just even if I'm offended, because, obviously the case that, this case in Colorado, the person that tried to buy the cake could make the case that he was offended because the baker wouldn't make the cake for him.
Sure.
But no one seems to care that his feelings were hurt, or he was offended, or he was discriminated against. No one seems to care. Right. The crux of it to me is that there is this quote-unquote acceptable discrimination because it's under the guise of religious tolerance, of acceptance. It's catering towards minorities and to women and to the poor. It's basically anyone that's not a white male. It's not even about whether we're offending people. It's basically there's this prescribed, politically correct way to do things and to behave and to treat each other, and if you're outside of that box, the law is not on your side. And that's what this double standard clearly points out, is that the law is not blind. The justice is not blind in this country. It is catering towards a very narrow definition of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Definitely. You brought up the thing, justice not being blind. What's the, is it Lady Justice, right? I'm so piss poor at this, right? What's the statue where I think it's Lady Justice standing there, and she's got a blindfold on, right? Because the point is, it's supposed to be blind to these things, ethnicity, races, right? It is supposed to be that way, that justice is applied evenly. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, etc., right? That's the way the law was intended to be applied. Now, I mean, even have I'd have an argument with the whole system to begin with. Right. But the idea behind that, I would argue, is a good one.
Right. Right. I mean, in theory, if that were actually possible, so if the law itself, I'm a big fan of Frederick Bastiat and his short little book, The Law, and that's really basically was my starting point down the road to liberty. But read the book, The Law. It's a short read, but in that, Bastiat points out that the law itself is biased because of the way that it's created, because of the way that we write laws. It's basically people with power, people with influence, people who cater to voters can get laws passed. So the system itself is, the cards are stacked against people before we even begin. So then you come to the courts that are supposed to apply and supposed to put these laws into practice. There's no way that justice can be blind, because the cards are stacked against you from the beginning, because the laws are written that are slanted a certain way against you.
Yes, no doubt. And I think that's very important to point out, because I think most people don't realize what you just said, right? They haven't really thought about it, I guess, is my point, is if you stop and you really think about this, what Tim said is true. Basically, it's stacked against, in large part, people who don't pay attention because they're not involved in the lawmaking process.
Right.
So they don't even know what the laws are because they claim to not really care, except for when they come down on you, all of a sudden people really care. So anyway, I think that's a great point. I think we have that covered. What the state is really trying to do is to modify or change people's behaviors is what we're driving at here. With the bakery, I guess, like Tim's, I think it's a bakery epidemic thing. The bakeries in Indiana, and see, I had an excuse for the bakeries in Colorado because they're smoking pot. But I don't know what's going on in Indiana. I can't answer that one. But so that's the point. The state is trying to change people's behaviors, which is different than really what we're trying to do on this show or in general with education. Is yes, ultimately behaviors are changed, but really through the mind and through persuasion. And that, I would argue, that gets lasting behavior and also something that can grow, right? Because people can teach other people. But when you do it by the point of a gun, basically, people clearly don't learn the lesson behind, what's. I don't even know if this is poor, but say what is trying to be taught, because I don't know if there really is anything trying to be taught other than, hey, pay attention to the gun and do what I say. So I think what we're doing on this show is a much larger endeavor. It's a longer term thing. It's tougher to do, but once you win that battle, again, poor description, I think it's lasting, much more lasting than what the state is up to.
Again, what's interesting, Tom, is I've heard parents, anyone that's had children or has children, and I've heard parents say this all the time, is that your goal as a parent, hopefully, is to teach your child to think, because you're not always going to be there when they're 15, 25, 35, 55 to sit there over them and say, you shouldn't do that, don't do that, And so your goal is to try and, as we're doing here, teach people to think outside of the threat of violence that will get you, like the state is trying to do, using the threat of violence to make you act right, act correctly. We're sitting here trying to tell people, think about what is right or wrong. Outside of what the state tells you is right or wrong, think of what's right or wrong. And why? Why is it that you believe what you believe? I mean, and can we do that without forcing people at the point of the gun to think differently? And I think absolutely we can. We can change people's mind. And like you said, it's going to be lasting impact rather than trying to avoid punishment like a small child. If you can teach them how to think and how to behave properly and how to behave like rational, normal people would, and treat people equitably and fairly and with a certain amount of courtesy. I mean, that can be done absolutely without force, without coercion, and it's going to be a better result.
This goes to that series on justice, what's the right thing to do. Do you view people as ends or are they means? Right? And I think that's, the utilitarian versus the strict constructionalist view. It's, do I use you to just make form society in the shape that I wanted to do? Or do I treat you as a human being and treat you fairly all the time, no matter what is at stake, and try to persuade you yourself to saying, hey, this is what I need to do?
And what's really interesting for me, and I don't know why statists that and what we call statists, the people that push for morality through coercion, morality through the use of law and through the government, what I don't understand is you don't have to look that far back. And you had mentioned places like in Nazi Germany and in communist in China, but even in the United States, you don't have to look back that far to see that the laws actually perpetuated bad behavior. The laws actually legalized bad behavior, immoral behavior. So what on earth makes you think that, well, this time we're going to get it right? The government's going to get it right this time because we know more today than we did 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Why would you put your trust in that mechanism to enforce morality when clearly the history books show how poorly the government has been able to do that in the past, however many centuries of history that you want to trace back.
It's amazing how many people are willing to take on that battle. I'm like, serious? You want to defend the state on this issue? Are you kidding me?
Right.
I mean, like you say, the history is not on their side. It's abhorrent. And anyway, that's my experience anyway.
Yeah.
But don't you guys find it fascinating that so many people don't even interpret or feel that the state is infringing on their rights? That they just go, well, that's just the way things are. That's just the way laws are. And if you don't like it, we'll try to rise up and we'll try to change it back.
Yeah, well, nothing's perfect, Tom.
Right.
I'm like, okay, far from it, though. And even, like we've talked on this show before, Brad, okay, even if you can get somebody to say, well, nothing's perfect. Okay, well, maybe nothing is perfect, but could we make it better at least? Can we understand what better is and go, hey, that's the direction we should be moving in? And I think people, a big chunk of people, object to that whole discussion. And that's what really blows me away. I like, what does Tom Woods always say? Something about allowable. I can't remember what his slogan is. He says something like beyond allowable opinion or something.
Yeah.
Because he's right. There's certain things that are taboo that society says you just can't even talk about that, and it freaks me out what those things are.
I never understand that thinking. I never understand the thinking that the system is the way that it is, and we just got to kind of accept it. I mean, I don't know people that live that way, what they think when they wake up in the morning. But to me, I mean, that's a sad commentary on society when we basically wake up and we're like mice in a rat trap, in a maze. We're happy to get our wedge of cheese in the morning and that's it, and we just don't really think about life outside of the maze, and that's sad. I mean, that's when you're able to kind of convince a society that what you see is what you get, and you don't rock the boat, don't expect more, don't insist on better. I mean, it says a lot about why there's so much apathy and indifference in our society today.
It's like two slaves from back in the day in the South. One guy saying, "Hey, we're slaves. We shouldn't be slaves," and the other one saying, "Shut up. You're going to draw attention and make life worse for you." Right? Or the other analogy at work is, you and I are both in jail. We're wrongly incarcerated, and you're saying, "Hey, let's befriend the jailer, so we can live a little more comfortably in here." And I say, "Heck no, I'm breaking out. I belong here."
Right? Yeah.
It's just two ways of looking at things, and I freak out how people seem to be, like you say, they just, "Hey, we're slaves here. Just let's make life a little better. I only have 30 more years to live, so good enough."
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to move on just ever so slightly. Lou Rockwell had a little bit of commentary on this whole, I guess as it turns out, the bakery industry. But he says activists are searching out small businesses to destroy. And think about it. He's looking at this from the other direction, right? Instead of, a lot of people say, well, the pizzeria got wiped out, the bakery got wiped out, whatever, because of what they did, and they're paying for their bad actions. I think a lot of people look at it that way. But look at it this way. Activists are searching out small businesses to destroy. If the owner doesn't want to make a cake celebrating gay weddings, right? If he doesn't want to do that, they want to destroy that business. These predators want owners financially destroyed and preferably jailed for such a hate crime. Of course, the actual hate crime is calling down state violence on the peaceful. I think that's a great point he made there. And then, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, again, not to keep hammering at this, but again, these predators that are thinking this way, that are using this tactic, I just have to ask. Look, if the tide turns, and if public opinion all of a sudden goes against you, think about the beast that you're creating with with this game plan. All it takes is, in a democracy, all it takes is 50.1% of the vote. I mean, if you can sway 50.1% of public opinion that, we're actually, the evildoers are not these bakery owners, but it's the people that want these cakes, you're going to be in a bad situation there because of this beast that you've created.
It could be dangerous to make a big gun because someday they could turn around and point it at you.
Exactly.
So he says, Lou says, by the way, in a free society, and this is something I think Brad likes. I'm trying to point this out just so people understand. In a free society, unlike the current USA, customers should be or are in a free society free to choose the commercial enterprises they wish to patronize, and owners make their own decisions basically on which customers to accept. Right? I'll take this project on. I won't take this project on. Virtually no business owner will turn down a paying customer. And when he says virtually no, that doesn't mean every single one will not, but very many. Jim Crow laws, for example, had to be enforced by state violence. But if you own property, you should be able to make the rules. And he goes on, this is important, just from some of his experience. Some years ago, a woman colleague from the Ron Paul congressional campaign and I went to lunch in a gay area of Houston. We weren't in the all-male restaurant for long before some of the patrons began muttering nasty and obscene things. As we prepared to leave, the manager asked us to go. Both of us, being libertarians, upheld the restaurant's right to discriminate. That is tolerance. Indeed, what decent person would seek to force himself at the point of a government gun on those who don't want him? Freedom of association and disassociation is a bedrock of liberty and social peace. And I think he speaks to the big picture there, and I think that was important to point out. So. And Lou is alluding to this, but ultimately, what these people that are fighting these bakeries and pizza places and so forth, what ultimately the perception is, and I don't understand this, but this seems to be okay by most of the people that are pushing this agenda, is there is some good or service that exists just by the mere fact that it exists in our universe. I somehow claim some portion of that just because of the sheer fact that it exists. So if there were pizzas, and I represent 1 trillionth of the population of the world, I have a right to 1 trillionth of the world's pizza because it simply exists. And that logic to me makes absolutely no sense. Well, it can't, because if it truly is a right to pizza, it can't be a right because it obligates someone to make that pizza for me.
Right.
Right. And I think that's Walter Williams does a great job of pointing that out.
That's a great point.
My rights don't obligate anyone to do anything for me. The real rights, and it's even hard to explain this anymore because the word rights has been so bastardized that people can't understand what I'm saying, and sometimes I get confused with, well, okay, which way am I using the word right now? A true right, which seems stupid to even say that, does not obligate another to anything, right? If I had a true right to free speech in the way the world is today, that means I could go over to Tim's house at 2 o'clock in the morning and go in there and I could, start speaking loudly in his bedroom, and he'd probably wake up and go, hey, what the heck are you doing? And I'd say, hey, I have a right to free speech, and therefore, not only can I stay here, I think you should give me a microphone, right, and a megaphone or whatever, right? You have to do that for me because I have a right to free speech. And of course, the right to free speech, I would argue, really doesn't exist. You just have the right to property. So you can do it at your house. Since you own the property, you can grant yourself permission to, stay up till 3 in the morning talking about nonsense, or maybe some people would say that's what I'm doing on this show. But, right? That's it. You have property rights. And I don't want to go too deep into this, and I've gone too deep already, but, property rights gives you the right to discriminate over your property. And that's what these people in the pizzerias and the bakery industry that I guess we're attacking now are not able to do. they cannot discriminate over their own property and say, hey, I want to make a cake or I don't want to make a cake. So we're violating their property rights. And I know, and I'm not saying, I think people will misread a lot what Tim and I are saying here, is that we're not supporting, bigotry, sexism, racism, all those, isms. What we're saying is the way to overcome these things is through education and persuasion, not through a point of a gun. Again, the gun can change behaviors, but it can't change minds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that, especially like the pizza place, for instance, what's really interesting is I heard that they had to close in Indiana. I heard that they had to close because they were getting like bomb threats and angry people, kind of like prank calling and that. But then,
I think death threats, actually.
Death threats, and you're right. But on the flip side, right, you've got these strangers that are pouring money into the bakery through some crowdfunding thing, just based on their beliefs.
Right.
So this is really the crazy thing. This is what when you have these laws that are trying to enforce morality this way. You have a you have a pizzeria owner that's not making pizza, that is shutting down out of business because they are they're standing up for their religious beliefs. But you have people all over the country, all over the world maybe, that are pouring money into their bank accounts to basically not produce pizzas. Right. So because we want to stand in solidarity with them.
Right.
Which makes absolutely no sense. How does, at the end of the day, we're not getting pizzas, and people are giving money to people because of their religious beliefs, which is fine. If you want to choose to do that, but net, we're down. If you want to talk about the world production, we're down pizzas.
Exactly. And I like pizza, by the way.
I love pizzas.
I'm gonna have pizza at my gay wedding, by the way.
There you go. Sweet. Anyway, okay, so we're talking about how the state is trying to change behaviors, but it can't change minds. So this is where I'm going with. We're gonna go to the I guess the obesity problem in South LA and the super skinny problem in France. Just to point out the absurdity again in some of this. This is from the Bastiat Institute. I'm just going to read just a couple sentences here. It says, 7 years ago, Los Angeles made national headlines with a novel attempt to reduce obesity in South LA by banning new fast food restaurants. But a new study found the effort has not achieved its intended goal. The percentage of people who were overweight or obese increased everywhere in LA, but the increase was significantly greater in areas covered by the fast food ordinance. And I have the link here. I'll put it on the Facebook page. But really what this was is there was all kinds of exceptions, and I can't remember them all. But basically this district in LA said, hey, we're trying to look out for people's health issues. And no fast food joints can come in unless there was all kinds of, if you're connected, if you're like in a strip mall, you can. If you're part of a chain, I think you could. Or there was more restrictions on it. It was just crazy, all the restrictions. So what happened is, in the end, and again, this isn't the end. Time goes on. I get it, when the end is. But up to now, there's more obesity than there was then. And I'm going to also argue that people are paying more for fast food because certain competitors, if not,
they're squeezed out.
Yes, if they were not saying, hey, you cannot come here, they just said, hey, there's so many restrictions, like piss on it. We'll just go to San Diego instead.
That's right.
Right? We'll make more money in San Diego because we don't have to do whatever we have to do here by these crazy restrictions. We don't have to deal with it. It's just easier to operate. Our costs will be so, this is what happened. And there was if I remember right, there was a reverend who was interviewed in that article, and he said, well, actually, and he was at a fast food place, and the deal was, he says, well, actually, I find it, convenient because my time is very valuable. I can come to a place, eat quick. Some of them are nice where I can actually meet with people while I'm eating quick. That's being limited, at least to some degree here, that wasn't before. So all I'm saying is the consumer is the one who's ultimately paying a higher price or paying or getting less convenience out of this whole deal. I think that's what's ultimately happening when the state is trying to change people's behaviors, right? In this regard, hey, we got too many heavy people, we're going to try to fix that. So I don't know. I'm sorry, Tim, I kind of cut you off there or whatever. Did you have something to add on that?
Anytime, and I don't know why the government, we can go on and on about all the different ways the government messes things up, but food, for some reason, food is the thing that is so obvious that to see and easy to see and track how much nonsense the government creates when it comes to our food by trying to steer us into certain behaviors or certain forced lifestyle changes, and it's abysmal. It's always an abysmal failure. And not only that, the added costs that are passed on to consumers to try and meet the new requirements, to meet the new standards, to limit competition. Ultimately, it doesn't make us healthier. It doesn't make us any more conscious of the food choices or the dietary choices that we're making. All it does is it overburdens the producer with costs and with requirement and kind of checklists that they've got to meet and so forth, and those costs get passed down to the producer, to the consumers, and it limits competition, like you said. It squeezes out people from the market that could come in and offer lower cost solutions or lower cost options to the consumers. It's all it does. It does not improve our health. It does not improve our overall well-being. And I don't know why the government can't figure that out, or why consumers or why voters can't figure that out. That, instead of having the government push this down, if you don't want to eat a fast food burger, just don't. Go eat a salad.
Wow, that seems so complicated, Tim.
But yeah, exactly. But why limit the Reverend from L.A. from getting his chicken McNuggets? I mean, and what point? What source? What exactly is the reason behind that? I don't know.
Right, and I think you're I guess being a bit facetious, because I believe you do know. The state, of course, what they do is they use authority. So any chance they possibly get, it doesn't matter how absurd, we got to use our authority. And that's the game. But just frustrating that, as you say, the citizenry doesn't go, hello, this ain't going to work. This can't happen. We're not doing this. They just. I'm always amazed by the tolerance of the people to take more. When I say take more abuse. I just freak out that people just go, hey, that's it, enough, game over. I'm sorry, I see now that on docket I don't have this next thing that I want to do, so we're gonna go all the way to the other extreme here on this, and it's a story. Geez, where am I? This is from NPR.org. I don't know. It's entitled "The Two-Way." The title of this was called "France Considers a Ban on Overly Skinny Models." So now we got the opposite problem here. This is a little interesting. Brad, I know you saw this one, but I'm just going to read a little bit so people kind of know what this is about. France is considering banning the use of anorexic models in the fashion industry. Legislation debated Tuesday in France's parliament would require modeling agencies to get medical certificates from models to prove that they have a body mass index of at least 18. And models would have to get routine checkups, too. Agencies that violate the law will be subject to fines up to 75,000 euros, blah, 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 and even prison time. Websites and online forums that glorify anorexia and other eating disorders also would be banned. And I won't read this whole thing. I'll put the link up on the Facebook page. But there was another article, and I don't have it up here at the moment, but of a number of thinner gals who claim they're constantly ridiculed in public for being too thin. And, someone was saying, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just kind of naturally thin. It's not like, I eat till I'm full. Obviously, maybe I don't eat as much as most people, and I don't feel like eating more. But they're subject to constant ridicule. And they were like, I'm just sick and tired of this.
Yep.
But, yeah.
It's thin shaming. It's not fat shaming. It's thin shaming.
Yeah. And again, is this going to work? And I don't happen to be one of the guys, but apparently the marketplace ultimately likes to see these runway models really thin. That's the only explanation I can come up with off the top of my head as to why they are where they are. I'm assuming their employers are trying to satisfy their customers
Right.
And maybe they are in fact encouraging these models to get thinner and thinner, but it's because of market demand, right? What are they supposed to do now? And again, I'm not saying their sales will, I don't know how elastic their sales are, right? But their sales may go down because, I don't know, they got bigger models. And people don't like it. I don't know, they're going to go watch a basketball game instead or something. I don't know what people do. But it seems crazy that what they're saying is, hey, the marketplace is essentially demanding that models be thinner, and we're going to say we aren't going to supply what the marketplace wants.
Right.
I think one of the additions to that, the person I heard speaking, as I heard this, I was driving down the road, I could barely believe my ears. I'm like, are you serious? Really? We're going to legislate that. There's a law now that makes that, but they said that the primary reason that this particular law, whatever person was, said that this is a bad influence on young children and that we're creating a society and so forth and so on. But what you just talked about with regards to who the runway models are working for, are the fashion people and so forth and so on, isn't that all free market, right?
Right. And again, I'm not saying, again, I think people want to, who are, I would argue, our adversaries are going to say, Tim and I are arguing that, well, women should be, bulimic and what's the other, anorexic.
Yeah, we're not condoning anorexia.
Yeah, I think it's a really bad thing. But I'm just saying, how is this law possibly going to work? I get it. It's going to change their behavior because the modeling agencies are going to have some kind of monitoring program to check for their BMI of whatever the number is, 18 and a half or whatever.
18.5, yeah.
Right? They're going to have to do all this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, ultimately, do some of these, I don't know anything about the fashion world. Do some of these runway...
Are you serious, Tom?
I know, I'm freaking out right now. Sorry.
Oh, my gosh.
Some of these go underground, right? If this actually happens, if this law comes to pass, there's going to be, private showings. I don't know how it works, right? And they're going to do it that way to show the latest fashions on, whatever they consider the best models, which are apparently the super skinny ones, right? And it's more dangerous is my point. Go ahead.
And I'm like you, Tom. I don't know. I will freely come out and admit that I don't know much about the fashion world, but I'm guessing Paris and Milan and a couple other places are the hub in New York. Are like the hubs of international fashion. But let's follow this logic through, and we're talking about how the markets work and demand and so forth. If there is this market demand for thin models, and France has decided basically to take themselves out of the game. And they're saying we're making it illegal to produce any kind of fashion work or publication or production with these overly skinny models. If there truly is a market demand for this, aren't we basically shoving business into the other places like New York and Milan and so forth? These lawmakers think they're protecting these models, when in fact all they're doing is they're pushing the business off to other markets that are saying, hey, we're more than willing to fill that need. If there's a market demand for it, come to us. We'll fill that need, no problem.
Fantastic.
That's all they're doing.
That's a great point, Tim. Excellent. I did not mention that. That's awesome. That's what they're again. They're thinking they're going to solve. I think they're thinking. I don't. Who knows exactly what they're thinking? But right, the idea that at least that they're publicizing is that we're going to solve this problem. They're not going to solve the problem. It's going to move from point A to point B.
That's exactly what's going to happen if there is a market demand for it, and maybe there is. Maybe like you said, maybe the demand is pretty elastic. So maybe we'll start to introduce less wafy looking models, and the market will like it, and it'll run. I'm great, but you're not going to get there by shutting down one supplier globally of that product and hope that that's going to solve the problem globally, because there's other markets that are going to produce that good.
That's right. It's no different than raising the regulations on textiles in the United States. What's going to happen? That industry is moving elsewhere.
Exactly. You're going to get your fast food in San Diego instead of South LA.
Exactly. and you're going to destroy the environment in the process, because now I'm taking a road trip down to San Diego.
That's it. Exactly.
I could tell you stories about the stuff that happened at Douglas Aircraft and the Air Quality Management District, but that's another show. But okay, so we were talking about part of this angle on this particular story. There's going to be this monitoring. They're going to check their body mass index. By the way, in that article, there was some argument over, well, that's not the way you should do it over BMI. You should do it over some other means. I can't remember off the top of my head. Right? And can you imagine the can of worms is going to open over that? No, you shouldn't do it that way. You should do it this way. And
Yeah.
So again, no resolution there whatsoever. But the monitoring thing, that brings me to the California drought. I don't know if you guys saw this one. This is what we used to call him. They used to call him Moon Unit Brown, I think. Jerry Brown, the governor of California. Of course, now he's saying with the terrible drought, and of course, I don't know that he's even using the word drought. He's been using climate change, because he's big into that. The bottom line is, I call it drought when there's less water than anticipated. Right, I just call that drought. Kind of a simpleton guy. Anyway, apparently this drought's been going on for years in California, and with the water essentially being a monopoly by the state, who controls the water rights, where the water goes. It's such a convoluted mess out there. I don't even know exactly what I'm saying, other than I know ultimately the state is in control of the water there. And, of course, the reservoirs have been going down. And, again, I'm not monitoring them, so I'm not on top of exactly, but I understand they've been going down for years. And since there's no free market price for water, now you face, ultimately, and I don't know how severe this drought is. I mean, I'm told it's severe, but I don't know exactly what that means anymore. But if you don't allow prices to move for water to reflect all the market parameters, scarcity, oversupply, a surge in demand, all the things that could happen, right, in the economy. Since you don't have that, you don't have a free market price on water, the price apparently has been kept lower than it would have been in a free market, so people keep using it. So now they're looking at this tremendous shortage with the drought and the use of water. And Jerry Brown says the way that we're going to fix this is we're going to monitor you. And he even went as far as saying they're going to measure how long you're in the shower. And actually, that one I think is really going to hurt him, because when people feel like, just we were talking about other stuff, and when people all of a sudden feel invaded, and again, I don't know exactly where that line is, but I got a feeling this is the line, at least for water use in California, that when I don't know what you're gonna do. You're gonna get a notification that your shower last Monday morning was too long, and you get, here's your retroactive fine from what you did Monday. I don't know how that's all gonna work, but I think that's where people are gonna draw the line. And again, I think, of course, they're gonna petition the state. They're gonna try to work this out. They're gonna try to reform the system. And I would argue again, none of that can possibly work. It's not that I don't think it could work. I'm saying it actually can't work. You have to let the free market take this over and let prices convey valuable information. Again, and I know there's no free market in oil, but it's a freer market than it is in water, to be sure. I would argue oil, you can't ever run out. It's not possible. And I know people think, well, there's a finite amount of oil, so we think, on this planet. Well, once you suck it all out and you burn all, it's gone, and so you ran out. And I'm arguing prices will dictate to you that you cannot, because as it becomes so scarce in comparison to the demand, the price will go so high that alternatives will be sought, and they will be found if the price is high enough.
Yep.
And maybe the alternative in the case of oil will be walking. I don't know, how drastic that could be, but people will ultimately wind up walking in the case of if the price of fuel gets so high. They'll abandon their vehicles and they'll just say, hey, I got to change my lifestyle. I got to walk or ride my bike or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm arguing the same thing would happen in the case of water if the price were allowed to be a market price. And again, all I'm doing here is I'm putting out two things. Jerry Brown's going to monitor you all the way down to your morning shower. And, the state is not the solution. The state, in this case, of course, is the problem. And I know people say, hey, you idiot, Tom, the state's not the problem. It's the lack of rainfall. I'm saying you got to have a mechanism that can deal with these things. And the state is obviously a mechanism that cannot do that. Again, I would argue, look at history. It doesn't work.
Tom, I'm reminded of this, and I'm like you. I haven't followed the water crisis situation in California very closely, although I know that I've seen it kind of pop up time and again. From what I understand, is like you said, it has to do with the fact that basically there is no incentive for ordinary consumers and businesses, for that matter, to restrict their water usage as long as the price is unnaturally low.
Yep.
And that's low because the government keeps the price low. It doesn't reflect the true value of water in a free market. So as long as that happens, you're going to have people without the incentive to conserve or to use less water because it's cheap and it's turn on my faucet, it comes out. I mean, I don't get brownouts like electricity where water doesn't come. I mean, it's still flowing through, and
right.
I see my water bill and it's only a couple bucks a month, and I can afford that. So why should I restrict my water usage? And this is this plan to monitor consumers' usage of water, to me, it reeks of like the Obamacare plan, where it was supposed to roll out uniformly. The Obamacare plan was supposed to roll out where it was going to impact both private citizens, individuals, companies, corporations, small non-pops. It was supposed to roll out initially. The tagline was that it was going to roll out all at once and everyone's going to be impacted at the same time. Well, lo and behold, the deep pockets came around and said, hey, wait, we need some more time here. So you pushed this off on the consumers, but the big corporations said, give us some more time to implement this. We get a pass for a couple more years. And that's probably where the big money is going to be coming in anyways. So you've got the same thing now with the water restrictions. If you're focusing in on the individual consumers, chances are, I guarantee you, this plan to monitor usage, the big businesses that use the most water are going to get a pass. They're going to get an exemption from this monitoring and from this restriction. And so you're going after the least impactful but the broadest kind of scope of individuals to hit all at once. But if you really want to be fair, if you want to be, if you want to be have the appearance of being of having a standard that's equally laid out, you got to lay that out to businesses, and it's not going to happen because businesses are going to lobby and get exemptions from this restriction because they're going to say, oh, you're going to hurt my business, I'm going to go out of business, and we can't have that happen because that means jobs. And so what this is going to do is it's going to pass this plan is going to be shoveled out onto just the consumers, and they're going to feel the pain of it. I hope that they fight back. I hope they push back and say, no, there's got to be another way. And the other way is let the prices reflect the market.
Right. And what's going to happen here is, they're going to say something like, okay, everybody's got to reduce their water consumption by 10%, or they're going to come up with some arbitrary number.
Yeah.
And then, see, I'm going to be the guy who lives there, and I have these, I don't know, every one of my faucets is leaky beforehand, right? So then I'm going to get those fixed, and I'm going to be the hero out of the deal. All right, there's really no inconvenience to me because I wasted water like crazy before, right? How can you impose this on anyone in any kind of reasonable fashion? The guy who was the biggest waster before is the guy who's going to come out of this unscathed. The guy who was, apparently of good conscience, I'm using my fingers for air quotes on there, trying to conserve water before, he's the one who's really going to get pimped over if they say, hey, blanket, you got to cut by 10% or some arbitrary number. He's going to say, I've already been cutting back. What am I supposed to do? Not take a shower, or do one every third day or something?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So you cannot do this in a way that's even-handed. Again, you have to let market prices do it. But
what'll be interesting to see is if, so like if you're like some people that like go and work out like at a gym or something, and some of them have like showers there. I wonder if this is going to, if this actually rolls out, is going to encourage people to shower at gyms or at other places other than at home to try and get around the system. And so you'll see water consumption not change one bit, but basically people's individual water consumption is going to go down, and the price of the businesses are going to have to go up because there's more people using water there.
Right. Right. I'm gonna take my shower at the gym, not at home.
Yeah, exactly. Not at home, because that's going to work against me.
Absolutely. Okay.
So quickly, both of you, what do you think the answer to the problem is, though?
Like we said, the water has to be privatized so that market forces will set the price of water. And if it truly is super duper scarce, the price of water will be very high, and that will encourage people to conserve or seek alternatives. Right?
Just like we've done in the oil field.
Yes. And lo and behold, they've come up with new technology to find more oil. Price of gasoline's come down. And again, I'm not telling you it's a free market. I mean, there's all kinds of problems there. But the market still works underneath all this regulation and these hamperings that it's fighting.
Okay.
So, anyway, let's move on. I just want to close out the show with this last deal just for a total change of topic here. Just and I know this one is unrelated and kind of on purpose because I wanted to address kind of a foreign policy issue, something that we actually don't do very frequently. I don't know why. It just doesn't come up as often, or I don't know. I hope a lot of people are aware of this recent, I don't know if it's actually a deal, the Iran nuke thing, right? The agreement they're trying to reach. I know it's like tentatively reach it, and I don't even know who's all in it. Obviously, the United States and a number of other countries on the one side, basically, and Iran on the other. And the objective, so stated anyway, is out there that, hey, what we're trying to do is to avoid the possibility of Iran getting a nuke. Right, that's the bottom line. They have a number of reactors and enrichment facilities, etc. That apparently they can ultimately they're a step away from creating the proper material to create a nuclear bomb, and that's what this giant negotiation is about, to try to keep Iran from gaining the bomb. And I just think it's interesting, It's like the three of us live down the block, and I got the biggest gun. So I'm going to negotiate with the other two of you to not have guns, right? What I'm intending to do here is take a different view than what's commonly taken here by people, so people can see a little bit of the absurdity of this. If Iran really believes that they're being threatened, and I'm not saying their position is rational or irrational. I don't know all the ins and outs to Iran's security. But I'm assuming that the reason they're chasing after this bomb is because they think they want it, or they want to use it either to defend themselves or ultimately to aggress against others, or to use it maybe even as a bargaining chip in these types of negotiations in the future. Right? Again, I don't know exactly what their motivations are, but it seems a little hypocritical to say, hey, we have the bomb, so we would like to prevent you from getting one as well. Again, if they believe they need one in their self-defense, why should we? And I assume what they're going to do is provide them all kinds of guarantees besides lifting economic sanctions, etc., which I guess I would call evil anyway, and that's a separate issue. But they're going to give them all kinds of guarantees and say, hey, all right, if we stop you from building a bomb, we'll guarantee your security. Right? So there's all kinds of backdoor deals. And the crazy relationships that are going on in the Mideast, where, I don't know, Iran's our adversary, but on the battlefield against ISIS, we're actually coordinating with Iran in some occasions to battle ISIS. And it's just a convoluted mix of soup there. Yeah. That's crazy. That happens from all this stuff. And all this stuff, in the end, it makes the world less stable, I would argue. And it makes, especially the U.S. taxpayer, poorer, because you're paying for this crap. Yep. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at, because I think most people see as, well, why should Iranians have nukes? I mean, they're kind of, I don't know. I think most people, they're crazy people over there. I don't think they should have them. And again, when I take these kinds of positions, I think a lot of people look at it as, well, why are you defending the Iranians? Well, it's not like I'm necessarily the biggest fan of Iranians. On the other hand, to my knowledge, they haven't been. I know they took the hostages in, 1979? I can't remember exactly when that was. It was a while under Carter and when Reagan came in. But I don't know how active. Again, the type of situation we live in, all that information is top secret, and I can't know it. So how can I decisively say they're really bad dudes, or I can't decisively say they're really good dudes either? Because I don't have access to the information in this free world in which we live. But I would just say, hey, if they want to protect their sovereignty, I don't understand why they should be stopped from doing so if they have legitimate concerns over their security. And I know, partly complicating the whole situation, and I know there's way more than what I'm stating here, but, Netanyahu isn't exactly a fan of Iran, and he's lobbying Obama and others to be on the side of, hey, basically shut them off completely. Because of the relationship, obviously, that Iran and Israel have.
Yeah, I mean, the whole focus of the U.S. foreign policy seems to be let's make enemies with everybody, and
oops. I don't know what's happening.
If we get in enough fights in between enough countries that we're bound to make some. You there?
Yep. I lost you for a second, Tim. But
you there, Tom?
Yep.
Oh,
sorry. I don't know what.
Oh, okay. That's okay. No, so I was just saying. I mean, I don't know what it's almost like this schizophrenic kind of random, flip a coin foreign policy that we have. It's like if we make enough enemies, then eventually, like, some of our enemies will be enemies of our enemies, and so we'll make some friends along the way. Yeah. But I attribute back to Ron Paul, and when he was in his presidential race, this is really what turned me on to Ron Paul and to liberty in general, and how our foreign policy is so messed up. Is that if these guys want to kill each other, why? I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good thing that they want to kill each other or go to war, but what are we doing getting in between all of these places and saying, like, no, you guys, I mean, like, we're the soccer mom that's trying to pull these kids apart and say, no, you guys behave yourselves. Oh, and by the way, I'll pick a fight with each of you at the same time while we're at it. I mean, it makes no sense to us.
And we'll have our military industrial complex supply you guys with weapons.
Right, and we'll arm you, by the way, but be nice.
Yes, exactly. It's just, I'll read some of this. This is from Lawrence Vance. This is his quote on it, and then I think we'll kind of shut it off from there. He says, the problem with the Iran nuclear deal is that it should not exist in the first place. Why do the United States, Israel, and other countries think they have the right to have hundreds and even thousands of nuclear weapons, and Iran have none? And then he goes on to say, not that I think that Iran is building one in the first place. And I don't know how many times he's got a point there. How many times have I heard Netanyahu and, I don't know, senators say, Iran is 1 year away from having the bomb. And I swear that was more than a year ago, right? About 10 times a year ago. And
it was at least 3 presidents ago that started.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And again, I'm not saying the Iranians are the nicest people on the planet. Again, I don't know. I'm not privy to the information. But I think it's, at the very least, hypocritical of the position here by the state, to be involved in this. And Brad and I talked just briefly before the show that, I think Obama's even gone so far as basically if the Congress isn't going to get behind this, well, I'll just do it all. I'll make the deal with Iran on my own. Yeah. And again, a dangerous mechanism. If you allow, basically the king to do this, what happens when the next fellow, even if you are totally in step with Obama and you love him and he's a great guy, who might argue with you? But what happens when the next guy gets in and you don't like him? And he has this kind of authority. Now, do you have a problem with the authority now? So, I don't know, just some things to think about. And again, I did want to just talk about this a little bit. The freedom philosophy is more towards isolationist, right? It would be not backing all these fighting countries, not supplying them with weaponry. Why? Because it just exacerbates the war. It makes it bigger. More people die. I think it's better to stay out of these things as much as possible. With that, I don't know if our audio's failing. I hear a little clicking in my headset, so I don't know if we're losing it anyway. But I've basically addressed everything for the show tonight. Is there something, Brad, that we did not address that we should address or that we should use to conclude? I have a few conclusions here. I don't know if we want to touch on them or not. I just wanted to throw it to you, Brad, to let you have your final word.
According to our show docket, Tom, I think we covered it all. And I think we covered it very thoroughly, and I want to compliment Tim, for somebody that has well stated positions. I thought it was awesome. Great contribution.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's
Thanks,
always
Brad.
fun to talk to Tim. He's got a wide range of views and information that he always puts in there, so it's always fun.
As we say in our house, you talk good.
Yeah, you talk good, Tim. Anyway, so I'll wrap it up because we're at over an hour and a half again. But I knew that because we had so many interesting things. So we did the fat people in L.A., the skinny chicks in France, the Iran nuke deal, the pizzeria and the bakeries in Indiana and Colorado. We were literally all over the map tonight. So I guess with that, I'm going to close.
I think we solved the world's problems then, have we not? I mean, can we
We did. This might be the last show of the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. There's nothing more to talk about, right?
go in peace, everyone? We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Brad, if you want to close out, and I'll put on the music, or if you want me to close out, whatever we do.
Knock us out, Tom. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, you've been listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show with Tim and Brad and Tom, and hopefully we got you to think. And like I will say, hey, please tell your friends, heck, even tell your enemies about the show if you like, so we can build our audience. We'd love to see that happen. And with
Tell
that,
our enemies.
yeah, some are, and I got plenty of them. With that, I'm going to leave you with Mac DeMarco and Salad Days. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Good evening, and we'll catch you next Tuesday night. Good night, everybody.
Sad.